Hello, and welcome to the America 250 edition of the Sunday New York Times Read Along, also known as episode 401. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and our Digimentors website. Please like, comment, share, retweet, do all the things you do on social media to make sure people can find the show. We are particularly thankful for everyone watching on replay. We know that 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time isn't the best time for everybody, but thank you for coming back and watching the show at a time that's convenient for you. We have a lot of special sections today and a great discussion that we're going to be having on what America 250 means to you. We also have several special sections from the New York Times that we'll be looking at and that we can share with you. The first is 6 sentences that have shaped the American story. You can get the PDF of that from our website at tinyurl.com/NYTAmerica250. tinyurl.com/NYTAmerica250. We also have a special feature in the New York Times Magazine we'll be taking a look at: Visions of America, the American Revolution through the eyes of 7 everyday founders. We have a gift link to that piece on our website as well. Again, tinyurl.com/NYTAmerica250. The show, of course, is produced by Digimentors, the social and digital company that Sri started with his friend Andrew Lee several years ago. And we produced this show in collaboration with Scroll, one of India's most important independent websites. Our sponsors are Muckrack and Graphic History Company. So we want to thank them for their longtime support of the show. And now, without further ado, our co-host, Sri Srinivasan. Sri, happy 4th. I guess it's the 5th now.
It's the 5th. It's the weekend of the celebration. Look back at the 250 years of the United States. We have a lot to talk about. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for being here today. Neil, where did you watch the fireworks?
I watched them from my living room. Between the weather last night, it was stormy, at least here in DC. Really heavy winds. We had lightning coming down. So we were able to see some from our window from our neighborhood fireworks. But I'll say we didn't, and also this year we weren't really looking forward to the crowds and kind of the heat and all that. But the fireworks we saw otherwise were on our TV. We introduced Emily to one of our favorite shows, Heroes, from several years ago, and we watched the first episode. She loved it, so that was certainly fun to introduce her to that.
That's great. That show stars Sendhil Ramamurthy.
Yes,
the first time I think many of us saw a South Asian actor playing a superhero in a superhero show. I forget if he's himself a superhero or not. You'll know.
He's a researcher, but before that, he was on a lesser known show, Covert Affairs, I think the name was, where he didn't have an accent and he was just a CIA agent without any kind of an Indian backstory. He was definitely someone to admire and look up to in that role.
Excellent. I got to watch the fireworks from our friend's home across the river. We live on the East River in New York and in Manhattan, and we went to Long Island City and were able to watch the fireworks. But there is something special about just watching it on TV because you get much better angles and the drones and everything else. But
Yeah.
You remind me that it isn't just the big fireworks displays in Manhattan or in DC that matter. There are these neighborhood fireworks all over the country. Every small town has some kind of display. And even in New York, as we were looking towards Manhattan from Queens, we saw that all over Brooklyn and Queens, there were little fireworks shows happening everywhere. So that's part of the spirit of this holiday. Folks, if you're watching, tell us how your Sunday's going. What did you do for July 4th? And also, what does America at 250 mean to you, whether you're in America or not? It doesn't matter. Everybody has an opinion about America because what happens in America doesn't stay in America. That's the big problem. The things we do here, good and bad, go around the world, but all the bad stuff especially goes around the world, and we all pay a price for it. So thank you so much for being here. We see lots of folks. John is tuning in from the East Village and says happy 4th. Doug is watching, as always, at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time, local time for him. Good morning. Gunter is watching from Austria at a much more reasonable hour. Gunter, thank you for being here. And Sujana is watching from Scotland. Welcome, Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar. We are so happy to have all of you joining us. Pradnya is watching from good old Silver Spring. She spent a lot of time in Europe in recent days. And Deborah is watching from Asheville, North Carolina. Attended the Hendersonville, North Carolina 250 parade yesterday. Many small towns in the area held parades and fireworks. Real Americana. And here's a hello that you can take over.
That's my mom. So the Parekh watching from New Jersey, she says, happy 4th and 250th for Independence Day. She's at my sister's in Fort Lee, Sri. So she has a great view of from across the Hudson River. I know they saw the fireworks last night. Mom, quick hello to Amy and Rajiv and Sanjay and Grace. And Sri, if I can, yesterday was my sister's and Rajiv's wedding anniversary. It was 23 years ago that they got married. So happy anniversary to Amy and Rajiv.
And I know you have a photograph you're going to show us, a special photograph. It ties into our 400th episode, which we celebrated last week with the 400th episode, 10 plus years, 275 guests of this New York Times read along. But there was a beautiful photograph that I was very touched to see, and I want us to be able to show it to all of you. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So this was after our 400th episode, and we were digging into our own archives to figure out how many episodes we've done, and we've obviously at the 10-year mark. But I think that this might have been my actual first New York Times read along. If you can see there, that's my father in bed. My mom thinks he was asleep and I was awake looking at the paper. But that's from when I was just not more than a few months old, I think. And that's actually a real a treasured picture, just to see the paper, the sections lying around, and leaning back with my dad.
And for those who haven't heard the story, Neil's dad was a was a publisher of a newspaper, an ethnic newspaper in New York, and a friend of mine, and a mentor to SAJA, the South Asian Journalists Association. And when he passed, he asked Neil and his mom and sister to make sure there's a Sunday New York Times print edition in his casket to be cremated with him, which is, I get goosebumps every time I tell the story. But this ties it all together, Neil, in this beautiful way. And we think about Prakash Parekh, uncle, right now. And there is the newspaper, and there you are. And this is a typical 70s photograph, right? That patina that it has is kind of the immigrant news, immigrant photography of what they look like after all of these years. So I'm so glad your mom sent you that. And this is you on July 4th.
3 years later.
Yeah, at the bicentennial. Yeah.
Bicentennial. We were on the Brooklyn Bridge that year. And, it's just really incredible to have these images to look back on, and you kind of think about where I was and what I was doing and how it relates to what's going on now. So thanks for letting me add these to the show, Sri.
No, of course. I'm glad that we were able to show that to folks. Tell us what you're thinking about on the 250th anniversary of America. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's see who's here. Amy is watching, different Amy, not Neil's Amy. Good morning from Port Angeles. Is that how you pronounce it?
Port
Washington.
Angeles. Yeah.
Angeles, Port Angeles, like Los Angeles, Port Angeles,
Yeah.
Washington on the left coast, where I watch the fireworks from my living room. They're sponsored by our town, by the private residential yacht, The World. Okay, and here's a greeting from Giselle. Diane says, hello from Margate, New Jersey. Saw on Instagram post of the Brooklyn Bridge fireworks. That was the
Yeah.
place to be. They had something I'd never seen before. They had this kind of waterfall fireworks down from the bridge. It looked fantastic. I want to find a photograph and share it with you folks.
But it also caught fire for a little bit. There was a fire on the
Oh my
Brooklyn
God.
Bridge yesterday. It doesn't look like it did too much damage. Clearly, I'm sure the bridge was blocked off for traffic, but it certainly was scary to see.
And Pradnya says my dogs would argue that fireworks suck, and that's a thing that you don't know till you have till you own a dog, that how much fireworks can scare dogs, especially it's the sound that they hear and they think of it as of thunder. Mary C. Curtis is watching from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I do want to hear from Mary what she thinks about the holiday and how America's doing. And we have our usual share of trolls who also jump into conversation, so we see that, but not a troll, a great person. Here's Paula Kiger. Good morning from Tallahassee. She was one of our hosts last week,
Yes.
and it was so much fun to have her and her reflections on the show. She's a loyal viewer of the show. Oh yeah, this is it. Let's show everybody. We had Tom Jolly, Wayne Camadoy, and Mike Connors, three stalwarts at the New York Times. I think between them, they've been there more than 130 years or so. And Tom is the print editor, Wayne's the New York Times art director, and Mike Connors runs the production plant and the production. And they gave us so much insight, and it was so much fun to have Paula with us hosting this show. Please go into our archives. You can see any of our recent 300 episodes. You can see there. We did 400, but Facebook deleted, as it does now, videos, and we lost so many of them. But we have so many that you can see, including last week's, and we'd encourage you to go through them. Pradnya says that the U.S. at 250 is a young teenager with sociopathic tendencies that needs a stretch in juvenile detention. And in my Facebook comments, I had asked folks to share their thoughts, and we'll get to them a little bit. At one point, Pradnya said if it wasn't for her family, she would have considered staying in Europe. And then someone responded, hey, Pradnya, airports are open 24/7. If you want to leave, you can
Oh,
anytime. Pallavi is watching. Good morning from Maryland. Watch fireworks in Howard County. And here is Mary's very important comment. I always contemplate what to the slave is the 4th of July by Frederick Douglass.
yes.
Wise words ever relevant. I would love for everyone who hasn't read those words to read them. And Amy says the World Yacht paid for the fireworks for their guests. Last year, the town could not afford them. So it was a win-win, I think. That's good to know as well. Thank you, Amy. And thank you again, everybody. Tag a friend. They can watch us live or later. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and on digimentors.group. And Neil, remind us what they can find on digimentors.group.
Actually, absolutely. This week, in general, on our New York Times read along page, we have several PDFs that we are able to share from the New York Times. But this week, there are two special sections. One is 6 sentences that have shaped the American story. You can get it by going to tinyurl.com/NYTAmerica250. You can also just go to our website, digimentors.group, and find the New York Times read along at the top, and then look for today's show. We also have a gift link to a feature in the New York Times Magazine, the Visions of America, the American Revolution through the eyes of 7 everyday founders. So certainly encourage you to check that out. We'll be taking a close look at both of those specials later in today's show.
Thank you, Neil. I see Naomi saying that it's hard to celebrate with joy this year from Rhode Island, given everything that's going on in the US. It's certainly understandable. And a good way to juxtapose all the conversations about celebrations and fireworks and everything else is to show a picture, a dramatic photo I saw yesterday on Twitter. And somebody later sent it to me and said, "Is this true?" And it is true, and it's disturbing to know that it is true. What you're looking at is a photo of a woman sitting in the metro in DC, not far from where Neil is, as she either goes to work or is going to, going out with her going about her life. And those are masked white nationalists marching on the Capitol. And that happened yesterday. And if you weren't watching the news, or depending on which news you were watching, you have no idea that this even happened yesterday. It's such a disturbing image. Neil, what do you think when you see this?
It's incredible on so many levels, Sri. There's first, just you can think of the photography and the photojournalism to get that shot. That's not something that you can you're going to frame and set up. And more broadly, it just reminds me that we really are, in a sense, living in two Americas. If you go back to January 6th, there are people who, were just taken aback and are still traumatized by what happened at the Capitol that day. And there are people who say that these were just tourists, exercising their right to assemble and peacefully walking around. The fact that they are still, present and making their presence felt on a day like July 4th is incredible.
And when you see this, and you hear those words that those are just tourists, or these are just tourists, imagine if there were tourists from other countries dressed like this with masks walking around. Would we treat them as tourists? No, they'd get shot. So this shows you how problematic the current situation is. And Pradnya says, uncover your faces, you cowards. And all I think of when I think of masked people like this is what the KKK did, and the hoods they wore, and all the trouble they created and terrorized people for decades. And it's really stunning to see this. And here is an article. If you don't believe that this happened, this is the kind of thing that you should know about. Deb says she's watching from DC. Big, long, late
Yes,
fireworks
they
is
didn't start
what they said.
till I think after midnight. The
What?
After the president's speech, so because of the storms, Sri, and the
Oh,
rain, they
okay.
actually had to clear the mall, and
Mhm.
everyone had to move to buildings. People who had been there all day trying to get a prime location. They had to move them into the museums and the government departments along the mall. President Trump didn't speak till about 11:30 or so, and by the time he finished, uh, the fireworks started on July 5th.
Mm.
So it was a belated birthday from our nation's capital.
One thing to reflect on is that he is so caught up in the optics and theatrics of his speeches. He wanted it to be a rally. He said, "Come, your favorite president is going to be speaking. We want to be there." That he could have easily just done a televised version of that speech, and it would have been fine. And then there wouldn't have been as much of a delay. Of course, the delay would have been there, but at least the delay that then people had to listen to him and then watch the fireworks, that could have been taken care of, because obviously much bigger audience online than it would be, and on TV than there would be in person. All right, let's
Well,
take a
in
look at
fact,
the.
I'm sorry, Siri. In fact, he said that he was going to speak regardless of the time that he had to go on stage. That he was making comments in his grandiose way. Even if there are three people waiting, we're still going to go live. I'll still be on stage. And clearly, these were the people he was wanting to speak to. It's Again, and as Mary says, many carrying the Confederate flag of losers and traitors, struck by how much the speeches of Trump fans, etc., leaned into a blood and soil vision of America. The other thing to note, sorry, I don't have the image of this. I can look for it. There was on the mall, there was a mini arch that they had
Yes.
constructed with an eagle in gold, with 11 stars on kind of the arch of that, the arc. And it was not lost among historians that there were 11 states in the Confederacy, as opposed to 13 stars, which would have represented the original 13 colonies. This is the America we live in at 250. This is Trump's America.
And for those who don't know, the blood and soil, that's all part of the idea that that's a white Christian nation, and we don't want to be invaded. We don't want to be diluted. And this is something that you've seen in Nazi Germany. It's
Yes.
real fascist imagery and rhetoric. But as you can see, it's not all rhetoric.
Blut and Boden was the Nazi phrase from the 20s. Blood and soil. That's where they get it from.
Yep, and that's what we have now. A president and vice president who endorse these things. Let's take a look at yesterday's paper just to see how the Times was covering it. The lead story was U.S. assigns army of FBI analysts to vote inquiry. And I've heard some folks who don't read the news or don't know the news say things about, we want the elections to be fair and free. Of course we do. But in a study of elections over a period of 30 to 40 years, there were less than 100 cases of inappropriate voting, and many of them by Republicans. And therefore, in a country where 60, 70, 100 million people vote, we're talking about something that's not a reason to unleash an army of FBI analysts to cover. It just doesn't make any sense when we have real problems in this country. And here is here are the photographs they used yesterday. This is Saturday's newspaper. One nation, many Americas, and they're also talking about the tall ships that are around. And my family's actually going to go out and see an Indian ship that came from all the way from India for the celebrations in New York. So they're going to go visit the captain on the ship in a little while. I'm going to miss it because I'm here with all you good people. And what else? Hot, put on a black kaftan, pop a pepper, and take a nap. The world's traditional ways of cooling off. So they're just, I think that's a look at how people cool themselves in other places. So Neil, go get your black kaftan.
Well, if you think about it, Sri, I mean, think about the Middle East and the Sahara, India as well. These are places that were traditionally had hotter temperatures than Europe and the East Coast and the U.S. Except for this year, we were dealing with this massive heat wave the last few days. But I know that from Pam's family, which traces their roots to the Middle East, to Iran, or her mom's side, they used to drink hot tea in the worst of the summer, the weather. It helps regulate your body temperature. Apparently, it's hard to imagine, but that's it's a tried and true method.
My dad, on the opposite side, my dad used to tell us that in Moscow, when we lived there, when I was a kid, that they would sell ice cream, and ice cream would be popular because it kind of heats you up. The calories heat you up. It warms you up. Rogish says, what's crazy about this is we could have been prepped for this as far back as the 70s. After all this time, we need to quit calling them racist and just say what they are being themselves. These are the honest ones. But the non-racist white people are quite permissible of racism. That's ironic. They just might not outright express it. Again, we should always say this. We're not talking about all white people, but he's right. There are people who are willing to put on a mask, carry a Confederate flag, and march on the streets of Washington. They represent a large section of America that is willing to do those things, but or is tolerant of that, or just couldn't get there, right? So there are a range of reactions that could be there.
Sri,
And
Dr. King spoke to that very point, that it's not, he was, yes, concerned about the people who would put on hoods and march and burn crosses, but he was also concerned about white liberals who still had racism, who expressed that racism. They were worse than the Klan in some ways.
yeah, and that's terrible. Naomi says, "Happy birthday, America," with three Ks for the KKK, and so they don't want to be diluted talking about the blood and soil, but they sat and watched their government sell their country right out from underneath their feet. That's smart, and that's of course what the presidency in America has been reduced to. It's just the whole thing is a way for Trump to get rich and put down people of color. Let's look at the Sunday paper, the front section. The lead image here is America one line at a time. And this is, I guess, a reference to the section we're going to be looking at in a little while. The lead story today: discord in Iran as hardliners resist U.S. talks. And I'm curious what my dad thinks of the story that Marco Rubio himself called multiple leaders around the world, telling them don't attend the funeral of the slain Iranian leader because that would be considered a hostile act by America if you did that. And so this is how petty these people are. And many Arab states and European states stayed away from the funeral because of the way that Rubio was calling these people. My dad is eating breakfast. Others that turn the camera to him. He's a former diplomat who hosts his own international news show, and I'd love to hear his thoughts on that. Let's see. By land, sea, and air, making 250 years of marking 250 years of U.S. independence is the other photograph there. The off lead here is Trump's profit in presidency shatters norms. Huge windfall echoes world strongmen. That's right. Putin and other leaders of dictators love getting rich, as Saddam Hussein did. And now America has that. We have so many things in common with these strongmen countries. Earn $180,000 tech salary, or even $180,000 tech salary can't keep up in San Francisco, tells you about kind of inflation and everything else that happens. But it also tells you, Neil, that people still want to be in San Francisco and still live in California. We were told everybody's leaving California. And over here, voters are turning to chatbots before they cast their ballots. We know that can't be good because we've seen what happens when people rely on chatbots for relationship advice, for financial advice. Now adding political advice, that sounds like a nightmare that we should be worried about. What we'll do is we'll just go quickly through the sections and then come back to go through the paper if we have time. We have about half an hour, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are sponsored by the Graphic History Company and Muckrack. We hope you will take advantage of those two websites, take a look at what they do, and support them the way they support us. And if you'd like to be a supporter or a sponsor, just email Sri at Digimentors and Neil at Digimentors.group. We'd love to have you join us as a sponsor, or if you have something you'd like to announce, we'd love your help with that. Let's look at the Sunday opinion cover is, let's see, America is still being created. That's interesting, right? After 250 years. I'm trying to figure out what this is. This is a Revolutionary War soldier or founding father or George Washington. And from behind, that's what that image is.
Yeah.
Neil, what do you think? Is that clear? And do you like that? Is that show we're still being created?
I don't know that it initially shows that we're still being created. I went right to the reefers at the bottom to see what they were talking about. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. Black Americans made it real. I think that is a very important essay to read. Democracy is not a structure we passively inhabit. It's a skill we practice or a promise we lose. That reminds me of the John Lewis quote that democracy is not a state, but it is an act. And for these men, George Washington lives on. I think the image was not as clear as it could have been.
Mhm. We're seeing lots of comments come in. Obviously, we're not going to be able to pull up all the comments, but let's take some. Stefan says, "Good morning, everyone. While a celebration is promoted, man, do we have a lot of work to do. Sorry, just not feeling the joy during this troublesome period. Just being honest, stay aware and keep pushing forward. Vote." My friend David Stone, who I worked with for a long time at Columbia, had a great idea. He said the way to celebrate and mark the date of America's independence and America, and to celebrate America, is to be on November 3rd voting and be like Hungary, which then pushed back against the autocrat there and made a big difference. I didn't think it would be possible to beat Orban in Hungary, and they did. And so that should give us all hope. And a reminder that if you have like to be on our mailing list, you can email Neil. He sends out a news. It's not a newsletter. It's an email update with all the cool free stuff we can give you, exclusive PDFs and things. He sends it out either on Friday or Saturday. This time he got it out even earlier. So sign up for it. You can leave anytime. I think that works well. So please sign up for that. And then here's a comment, someone saying, "Is there someone who doesn't enjoy getting rich?" Weird comment. So we might have missed some interaction and some conversation, but this is about taxes. And what people don't understand is that we pay taxes to not just, somehow feed Washington. We pay taxes so that we can have the America we want. The roads, the infrastructure, the so many parts of America, the public education that makes America possible. And these people who don't want to pay any taxes don't understand that, and are therefore fighting against any raising of taxes or paying taxes. I, as someone who lives in New York and am luckily in a tax bracket that I can pay taxes, I think there should be taxes, and I think people should pay them. And that's not something that I think everybody understands. Mary,
Go ahead. Go to Mary's comment.
Obama as president broke a lot of brains. It was not an America some folks ever envisioned and made them question their own worth. As Baldwin wrote, James Baldwin, white people in this country will have quite enough to do in learning how to accept and love themselves and each other. And when they have achieved this, which will not be tomorrow and may very well be never, the Negro problem will no longer exist, for it will no longer be needed. And that's so powerful. Thank you, Mary, for sharing that.
I think that really does speak to our history. Slavery is not a part of African American history. It wasn't a black problem. It's a white people's problem. It's part of American history. I think, Sri, just to go back to the comment that you read from YouTube, I'm wondering whether that was actually a response to the story on the front page about President Trump making
Getting
himself
rich.
rich.
Getting rich, yeah.
And the
Right.
interesting thing about that, there was no, I checked the YouTube shorts comments. There was no other conversation around that. It
Yeah,
was
so
just, is there
that's definitely
someone who doesn't enjoy getting rich? The president of the United States should not get rich in office to the tune of $2 billion. Let me repeat that for folks who might have missed it. It's the emoluments clause. You cannot use the office to make money. That's the simple fact. And this president has done that. And he bragged about it, Sri, in an interview. He talked about how his kids, they can't help but make money because of all the insider information they have. He said the quiet part out loud.
amazing. It's horrible. I mean, we laugh. We say this, Neil, multiple times on this show, that we have to laugh sometimes. Otherwise, you'll spend all your time just crying and crying about what's happened. And we now look at even things like Whitewater, which was about $100,000 business deal that involved the Clintons, and how much energy was spent on that. And fast forward to today, when we're talking about $2 billion, and that's just the money we know about. We are not
Yeah.
even counting everything else, so that's problematic. Let's keep going. The Sunday business cover is Revenge of the Philosophy Majors. AI labs are hiring contrarian, chin stroking, finger steepling sages. Who's underemployed now? And I guess finger steepling is people who talk like this or think like this, and
Right.
chin stroking. So thoughtful people. And this is right. AI philosophers are now a thing and are important. And this is an important story. As some of you know, my colleague and our friend Andrew Lee is one of the top experts about Wikipedia and on Wikipedia. And this is the headline: Wikipedia is battling for the soul of the internet. And that's because, under a threat from MAGA, autocrats, and AI, the site has pinned its hopes on an ex ambassador who is running it. This is Bernadette Meehan, 50, became Wikipedia's chief executive in January. So I look forward to reading that. Speaking of philosophy majors, I do want to tell everyone about this opportunity for you to join me and my friend, philosophy major Christina DiGiacomo, who is going to help me teach this class. It's called AI is Happening to You. Now what? And it's a class to get the practical skills and the confidence to stop being a bystander in the AI era. We want you to thrive in AI. It's a 3 hour workshop next Saturday, 9 to 12 a.m. Eastern, recording available. And the special thing is that there will be a month later, 6 weeks later, a catch up because so much will have changed. And we're offering everybody who watches here today a discount if you sign up, the NYTR50 discount. NYTR, New York Times Read Along, R 50 for 50% off, or write to Neil or me if you missed that. But NYTR50 to get 50% off this. And if you add up the 5 hours we'll be together, it'll be less than piano, 5 piano lessons for your children. Watch this with your family, watch this with friends, gather them and talk about these issues. We would welcome your participating in this. It starts next Saturday. That's coming up on July 11th. And also, recordings available if you can't make either of these dates. So, thank you for watching our show, and the connection to these the AI philosophers is cool that we have Christina with us. I call her an AI philosopher and doer. So that's really cool that she and
I'll
I
be
get to work
joining.
together.
I'll be joining Saturday, Sri.
Yeah,
Next
great.
this coming Saturday.
Perfect. Thank you. And there's the link and the code. So you go to srinet.mn.co, srinet.mn.co, and it's something called Mighty Networks. All right, let's keep going with the paper. Let's look at the metropolitan section, which is something that if you don't subscribe to the physical paper, you will never see, because it only goes to in this form with these stories, and the section only exists online. And trooper remains a suspect in killings is the lead story there. And the final hoof beats at Aqueduct. It's the end of an era for the thoroughbred racetrack with a subway station in Queens. Neil, when we were growing up in New York, remember the ads for the Aqueduct? And that was a place where you could go and see horse racing of all kinds. And that's over now in
Yeah.
that part of Queens. All right. Let's see here. The Arts and Leisure cover is sideways. Let's take a look. It says America on Screen, and 10 writers on the movies that get at the hopes, dreams, heartbreak, and hilarity of the USA. Pages six to
Show
seven. I'm just going to show that. I like that heartbreak and hilarity of the United States. And I'm going to try and find this. Yeah, so these are the 10 writers, and I'm sure there'll be some big names here. And Manola Dargis is here, who is the chief film critic. Amanda Webster, Jay Hoberman, all kinds of folks here. Let me just see if any of the movies you can see. Dirty Dancing is here. The Florida Project, There Will Be Blood. If you know any of these movies, let us know. Nashville, Zabriskie Point from 1970, Scarface, Disclosure Days coming out. That's the new film by Steven Spielberg. The Killer of Sheep is a movie here that I've not heard of. Dazed and Confused, I've heard of. And Nothing But a Man from 1964, recommended by Reggie Ogru. So, Neil, I think you have a viewing list there from that. Real estate cover is downsizing to the extreme in tiny homes. Interest continues to grow for minimalist, often mobile houses with no room to spare. So, look at that. That's the market for tiny homes is expected to increase to $14 billion from 13 billion in 2025. And that's a small home. It even makes room for, if you just look at the top, Neil, this looks like a great room, as they call it, in a suburban space, but it's actually, that's the whole home, is this home here. I guess you sleep here, kitchen, etc. And there's a bathroom probably out there as well. So that's the cover of that section. Let's look at the Sunday Styles cover. Ooh, it's George Washington dressing for the American dream. Over 250 years, what we wore to break free and to show off. So that's, I think, is pretty cool. Let's see in here. Daters work up a sweat, but not from swiping. New apps aim to connect people looking to share more than a love for cardio at gyms. So that's a long way from music. You know, there lots of women, especially who complain about all the gym bros who are distracting them and disturbing them at the gyms. And here now they're building it into this. So that's maybe those are gyms you'd want to go to or avoid completely. But here you go.
I
This
would
is yeah.
just say Pam and I are often thankful. We've been together for 32 years now, going back to college. And we're just thankful that we do not have to date in the era of apps and swiping left, swiping right. I don't know if we would survive in that
Or if
era.
you would have even met, right? You wouldn't know if
We
you would
wouldn't
have.
have.
Yeah, exactly.
We know that we would never have connected with each other just based on a profile, based on our very different interests in movies and activities and whatnot. I mean, we are very different people, but we found each other and it works.
So, because what you're saying is the algorithm would not have suggested you to each other, or because of your
Not even
interests.
the algorithm. I would have looked at her profile and kept moving on because she doesn't. We don't have the same interests.
Yep, I hear
And the
you.
same for her.
I hear you. Minimal nails have become a status symbol, and there's something called the invisible French manicure. This is what Zoe Kravitz was wearing at some event. And critics say there's a downside to eschewing a more elaborate look. What could that be? I don't know. All right, let's look at the book review. And the book review cover is Man of Letters, a collection of Harold Bloom's correspondence details the working life of one of America's most influential intellects. And this is Dwight Garner's review. Dwight, somebody I'd love to have on the show. Folks, we used to have guests every week, and now we have guests occasionally because we've gone to the shorter format. We're also available, by the way, on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. So please check us out there. Lots more comments coming in, so let's grab some of those. Good morning from Fort Lauderdale. Dr. Tachi's here. Check out her show, folks. John Lee's watching, and somebody correctly or thinks they're correctly identified as George Washington on that cover of the magazine. And a reminder about the workshop that we are offering with the discount 50% off. John has signed up. Thank you, John, for signing up and looking forward. And Mary says, Killer of Sheep is a brilliant film by the great filmmaker Charles Burnett, who also made To Sleep with Anger, and also a great film starring Danny Glover, who sadly announced recently that he's dealing with Alzheimer's disease. That's right, the great actor Danny Glover, who you folks will know also from The Color Purple, and for a particular generation, the movies with Mel Gibson, the Lethal
Lethal
Weapon
Weapon.
films. It was an unlikely pairing in the story as well as in real life. and he did very well. And Predator 2, he was the hero, an unlikely successor to Arnold Schwarzenegger's famous role as the Predator hunter. And so this is the book review. And Neil, we're now ready to look at the two things that we are able to preview and talk about. So we have a gift link and other cool stuff. So
Yeah.
I'll turn this over to you, Neil.
As a reminder, so this is the first thing that we're going to look at is 6 sentences that have shaped the American story. You can get the PDF on our website, tinyurl.com/NYT America250. But this is an incredible section, Sri, and I'm really looking forward to digging in. It takes 6 sentences, some of which you would predict, we hold these truths to be self-evident from the Declaration, and a sentence from Susan B. Anthony about women, one from Frederick Douglass as well. But if you look through the different sentences, each one has an essay by a New York Times writer, some of the best writers that the Times has to offer to dig in. So why don't you review what we have?
Sure. So there are 6 sentences. One of them, as you said, is the famous life, liberty, and happiness sentence. And this is from the Declaration of Independence. They're some of the most famous words ever written. Have you really, really read them? That's A.O. Scott's review, and then, or essay. And then, again, this is called America One Line at a Time. The only question left to be settled now is, are women persons? And this was Susan B. Anthony, said this in 1873, but we didn't have the 19th Amendment till 1919. Is that correct, Neil?
Yeah, I think around that time, yeah.
Yeah. Parul Sagal's review. Does all men are created equal mean everyone? Then, this is Frederick Douglass. A passionate demand for citizenship is still radical. From the first, I saw no chance of bettering the condition of the freedman until he should cease to be merely a freedman and should become a citizen. That's from Frederick Douglass, and this is by Jialin Yang. That's the essay. Then, okay, there's a famous sentence by Franklin Roosevelt, the president in 1933. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And the fact that this is in 33 and not it wasn't Pearl Harbor till 41. So he was not talking about Pearl Harbor or World War II. A transformative leader's clarion call to a struggling nation by Peter Baker. Peter's so prolific, Neil, and he's been a guest on our show with his wife, Susan Glasser. Amazing how he has time for this. He also gets called by Trump on a regular basis and yelled at. Okay, next, Nina Simone, the famous musician. Wesley Morris's essay is about her sentence. But that's just the trouble. Too slow, desegregation, too slow. Mass participation, too slow. Reunification, too slow. That's what she said. And there was supposed to be a movie of her life. I'm not sure it was made. There was some controversy about the casting of it. Okay. This is "Make America Great Again," a famous sentence, but not by Trump first, right? He did say that in 2015. Bill Clinton said it in 1991, and Ronald Reagan said that in 1980. The line on that red cap didn't start with Trump. It won't end with him either. This is A.O. Scott and his essay about this.
I did not know that, Sri. When I first saw that section, much less. I knew that President Reagan had the famous line about dawn in America,
Morning in America and a city on a hill.
America.
Yeah, exactly.
And Clinton talked about kind of renewing that spirit. Hope was Obama, but more let's go with Fleetwood Mac for Clinton. But I never knew that "Make America Great Again" predated Trump. That's interesting to read that.
Yeah, and folks, you can all read it because we have an exclusive special deal for you at no cost. You can download the PDF of this wherever you're on the world. Download it, share it with your children, your friends, your enemies. Show it to them. You can download it. It's called Six Sentences, and here's how you can get it. You go to tinyurl.com/NYTAmerica250, NYTAmerica250. Take a photo of this if it's hard to figure out, or just go to digimentors.group and look for the New York Times read along section, and you can get this in PDF form. You should all have that. And Dr. Tachi says that, wow, clearly this administration has nothing original about them. Sheesh, she says. Folks, we have about 10 minutes left with all of you, and we've got the magazine section. Neil, who do we have to thank for getting these great offers from the Times?
We have our Murderers Row of New York Times friends. They were on the show last week for episode 400. Tom Jolly, Wayne Camadoy, and Mike Connors. Every week I'm in touch with them asking about what sections are coming up. They're sharing the PDFs. They're giving me 2 weeks notice sometimes, and sharing the front page of A1 the day before so that I can do the promo work that I need to do for the show. So thank you to them. That's how we have the PDF for this section.
And we have so many PDFs. If you go through our archives, you'll find some of them very easily. Folks, in our 10 minutes left, we're going to look at the Times Magazine and Visions of America, the story of the revolution through the eyes of everyday founders. So we're going to look at that. But before that, I want to remind you that Sunday is a busy day around the Srinivasan household. Not only do we do the read along, we also do our Substack newsletter, also on LinkedIn, srinet.substack.com, and would love to have you folks subscribe. I'm going to be using several of the comments we have seen already today in my 250th essay. So please join us, and you can see our history of our pieces here. And one of the most important pieces I wrote, Neil, was about the liberal arts being more important than ever. And you went to a liberal arts school in Wesleyan, so you know that in the AI age, it's more important than ever. And I'm also writing there about how I use AI to manage my pre-diabetes. So would love for folks to check that out. And I want to just take a moment to remember, as we did last week, our friend Om Malik, who co-founded Saja with me, the tech journalist, venture capitalist. And those are photographs you can see of us together. And the last photograph we took together was in 2017. But those are pictures from the 90s. We founded Saja together in 1995. And the New York Times wrote about his heart attack when he was 41 years old, because bloggers were blogging themselves to death. And then they published his obit 19 years later. And my point was that he really maximized the second chance he got. And he bounced back from so many things, Neil. At the height of his fame, his company went bankrupt. He bounced back from that. He bounced back from the heart attack. And something most people didn't know till he passed was that he sold luggage. He couldn't get a job as a journalist, so he sold luggage next to Yankee Stadium, and then would go in the evenings and buy a bleachers ticket and watch the Yankees. And that's how he fell in love with baseball and became a Yankee fan forever, just like you. Not with the luggage part, though.
Absolutely. I want to give a quick shout out, Sri. Sometimes we don't get a chance to recognize folks watching on Twitter and commenting there, not on the actual video, but just sending out tweets. Anita Joe says happy 4th of July. And our friend Shashi says great episode 401. We also have folks watching on Instagram. Rosie Fullness says good morning from Providence, Rhode Island. So Rosie, thank you for watching.
Thank you, Rosie. And thanks for everyone who's watching on all the other channels, including on Instagram. Let's talk, Neil, about this this issue and what we can learn here. This is New York Times Magazine, and I'm just going to flip through it. It's Visions of America. And I'm Neil, I'm remembering how we went to Jake Silverstein's office, the publisher, the editor-in-chief of the New York Times Magazine, on a Wednesday to do a read-along. In the 50 years since the bicentennial, it says, the last major celebration of the nation's founding, our knowledge of the American Revolution has been greatly expanded. The 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence remain central figures, but they wanted to go beyond that through the eyes of 7 everyday founders. Neil, have you been through this yet? I have not looked at it, so I'm excited to
I've
see what they did.
I've looked at it online, Sri, and it's actually the online treatment is very incredible. A graphic novel type artwork, and that great full spread for each story. So this is going to be one of the stories, the native leader who tied his people to the patriot cause, Good Peter, I think. So that's the artwork. They're showing that. Look at that treatment inside. It looks like it's incredible that they did the full 2-page spread for these pieces, Sri. I
Amazing.
think it's great.
Amazing. And his name is Good Peter, 2 words. And this is from the magazine. Really amazing. So this is just one of the 7. So let's quickly look at the others if I can get to them. So the next one is here we go. The radical pacifist who inspired the first armed rebellion of the founding era. So this is so one thing, Neil, when you said and they said everyday founders, I thought like everyday founders today. They meant everyday founding fathers in a way, everyday
Yes.
founders from the revolution. It wasn't obvious to me that it was only looking back. I thought maybe there's something contemporary here, but obviously you learn a lot from this. So this was the name. Let's look for the name. So it's not immediately obvious the name. You know the name because you've been looking online, but this is deliberately done to kind of tease us through this. And the name is Tusk. He was a man named Husband, and he used a pseudonym to escape death, to escape escape death, to escape death, and resumed his battle against exploitation. So that's really cool. Let's look at the next. The next person is coming up here. Okay, here we go. The itinerant preacher who helped secure the separation of church and state. That is the treatment here, Neil, as you said, is amazing to see this. A Baptist preacher named John Leland is highlighted here, and then we go on, and this is so well done, Neil. I'm so glad everybody gets a free
Gift link.
gift link, right? And you're putting that on the screen so everyone can answer
Yep.
this. Get this? The Patriot housewife whose plays helped push America toward revolution. That's amazing. So I've not heard of any of these people, and this is important that they are able to highlight folks like this. So this is. Um, but the author was Mercy Otis Warren. The name that was popular was Thomas Hutchinson at that time, but it was actually a woman. Isn't that great? And we should make her famous. Let's see. Who else? The man of faith who heard a righteous call in the founding credo. And again, this is about one of these people. This graphic novel stuff is so cool. I like it. And the
And
essay
Sri,
rediscovered in the 1980s is the first known detailed analysis by a Black person of the contradictions created by the founding document. Go ahead, Neil.
we have a comment from Walter Grayson. Great example of graphic history. So if you put
Yes.
that back up,
Yes.
put that image back up. I want to just show that again. Some of these images, if anybody knows graphic history, it's Walter Grayson, who is a historian and economist, and who put together the graphic history of hip hop, which is an incredible a book. You can find it here. You can sign up for updates. They're going to be releasing volume 2 very shortly. So sign up at graphichistorycompany.com. But I'm sure that Walter is going to be all over this this special article. And
Yeah,
that's the cover.
I look forward to hearing his thoughts. And we're at my apartment now, and Neil was here, and we had 60, 70 people celebrating hip hop through the graphic history of hip hop. The young soldier who revealed how the Patriots really won the war, and this is so powerful, really well done. And this is what Walter knows so well, that you can tell great stories in this way. And we want to point out, I'm sure, without just knowing the times, this is not AI. This is someone's hand illustration, somebody, a professional doing hand illustrations, and pulling that together. I think there's one more. The enslaved woman who sued for freedom and emancipated herself. And this is Elizabeth Freeman, an enslaved woman. What a ironic name, right? Her name was Elizabeth Freeman. And I also saw this week, Neil, I heard of a woman named Liss, Liss, and I saw a website, rememberingliss.org, liss.org, who was also African American and played an important role in all of this. So
I want to give
I want to
credit.
dig into this.
The illustrator is Tim McDonough, who did all of those illustrations for the New York Times. So certainly shout out to Tim and to all the folks behind the scenes who do the layout and the design. It's one thing to get incredible artwork, but then to figure out how to lay it out. And Mike Connor's team at College Point, sometimes they get these special projects that Wayne and Tom and their teams come up with. They have to figure out how to get it in print. So it really is a miracle, the daily miracle that is the printing of the Times.
So as we wrap up here, we want to remind you that we do this show on Sundays. Next Sunday, we may or may not have a show. We may just do an Instagram version of the show, so we'll let you know. We won't do this version of the show, but I may just read through the paper on Instagram. But otherwise, Sundays, 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. Please look up our archives. Go back and watch today's episode if you just joined us. And also check out all the specials, the PDFs that you can get because you're watching the show. There's a special gift from our friends at the Times.
And Sri, we're at 9:30, but I'm going to ask for special dispensation. You asked people on Facebook their thoughts about America 250 and got some really interesting comments. We'd love to be able to share a few of them. I know several people who are regular viewers of the show shared their comments there as well. I remember Doug Levy and Pradnya Haldapur. Let's bring up a few of those before we close up.
I will do that. Thank you, Neil. And everyone, if you're connected on LinkedIn, on Facebook, you can see my request for comments. And then I said, I'm writing an essay about America 250 and would love to run any comments you might like to share. So we're going to show you some here. They're also going to be in my newsletter, srinet.substack.com. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you've upgraded to paid membership, a special thing we're doing is launching virtual salons so that you can participate even if you're not in New York. So please take a look at that. All right, here are some comments. Peter Sherman Crosby, today the USA is not as strong as many people think, nor as hard-boiled as many in the world imagine. On to the next 250. Naomi, who's watching, says there's no joy in Mudville. That's a mention
Baseball.
of a reference to a great, maybe the most famous,
Casey at the bat.
the most famous baseball, maybe the most famous poem in sports, apart from Invictus, which is also used in other areas. But Invictus also became famous when used in sports. But this is specifically about sports. America is loathed worldwide for its despicable wannabe king who's destroying democracy and murdering immigrants. Cruelty is his jam. The Philadelphia bicentennial was a horse of a different color. And Patty says, way before America at 350, there was the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. Include that first true American Revolution and also include how Native American democracy was used to create the U.S. Constitution. Finally, question the truth in freedom of religion. There's more, so this is a start. Thanks for asking. And Pradnya says, my son and I watching Ken Burns' The Civil War right now. It's a reminder of how much of an imperfect union we have always been. The promise that all men are created equal still was not realized after the Civil War, given Jim Crow, lynchings, and other injustices. And Rich says, while you're in research mode, I'd be curious whether any other country seems as self-absorbed as the US has come to be. All the stuff about American exceptionalism seems to have evolved alongside a dominant personality type, which I think of as an extreme form of know-it-allism, he says. And there's more there as well. Caitlin and Naresh are linking to things they posted. And then Apollo, who watches, says Philadelphia, that grand city and birthplace of the nation, is hot. An epic heat wave during 250 anniversary celebrations have seen events canceled, but the 4th of July fireworks are still on. In the larger picture, America is in a tight spot these days, and a president luxuriates in a world of trouble. What a great line. God's sense of humor, no doubt. DC may be a bust today, but Philadelphia plans to be at its best. Wow, beautifully written. Thank you. And that energy was put into a Facebook comment, Neil. That just shows you how great our readers and viewers and friends are.
And Sri, my comment, I just want to share, we've made progress, but we certainly have much more work to do. It's not about the fulfilling the vision laid out by our founders. I think their worldview was limited. The way our administration, and let's face it, too many of our neighbors treat immigrants, people experiencing homelessness, LGBTQ people of color, people struggling with mental illness and other marginalized groups is disappointing, to say the least. I would have used a few other choice words, Sri, but I wanted to keep it family friendly. We can and should do better. That is how we build a more perfect union.
That's a perfect point on which to end the show. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, for being with us here. We are really grateful to the community we have built on this for over 10 years with 275 guests and million plus people who have viewed our shows over the years. We're so grateful. And Neil, thank you for all you do to make the show so good and so helpful to so many people in the world. I'm going to go and write my newsletter now, srinet.substack.com. Everyone, please subscribe if you haven't already. If you get it, open it and forward it. We are so grateful. Thanks, everybody.
As a reminder, if you joined us late, you can watch the replay from the beginning on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on our Digimentors website. There is Sri's promo for the AI workshop that he's doing. You can get a special discount if you use the code NYTR50. So go to srinet.mn.co to get that workshop, and you will be able to get a discount for that. As Sri mentioned, we're not going to have a regular show next week. We'll take July 12th off. Sri might do a quick IG live. So if you're on Instagram, you'll be able to see Sri talk about the newspaper. We will be back on July 19th. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.